I'm Laura McNamara at the 2026 Fuel Ethanol Workshop in St. Louis, Missouri. Joining me now is Geoff Cooper. Would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, hi, I'm Geoff Cooper, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association.
First, let's talk about where we are this year with the year-round nationwide E15 since it passed the House last month.
Yeah, so obviously great news that we got that legislation through the House. That was a really heavy lift and a high priority for us. We were excited to finally get that done. But that means we're only halfway there right now. We have to go to the Senate, and the path forward in the Senate is going to be equally as difficult as getting that legislation through the House. So that's what we're focused on now. We do think there will be opportunities in the months ahead for the Senate to move that legislation. It might look somewhat different than the bill that came out of the House. And those are the conversations that are happening right now on the Senate is really two things. There's two issues that need resolved. One is, what does the legislation actually look like? Does it differ from the House bill? And then number two is, what is the vehicle? What is the pathway to get that legislation out of the Senate and to the President's desk? And so those are the conversations that are happening. We remain hopeful that we can get this bill out of the Senate as soon as possible. Would love to see this get done before August recess. But failing that, certainly by the end of the fiscal year, we think there's going to be opportunities to get this done.
And have you heard any specific vehicles that could be possibilities?
Well, there's still some talk about attaching the language to the Farm Bill in the Senate. There's also the opportunity, or probably the likelihood, that there will be some supplemental funding packages coming together in the months ahead, whether that's for the Iran war or other needs. There could be an opportunity to ride on a supplemental. There's also the highway bill, surface transportation reauthorization bill that needs to get done. That bill has to pass. And then, there's a couple other things that could be moving. And again, if we miss out on those, obviously Congress is going to need to do appropriations at the end of the fiscal year for the next fiscal year, and that will provide a chance or an opportunity. So again, we think there's multiple vehicles, multiple opportunities to move this legislation, and we're just going to have to see which one ends up being the best fit.
As we continue to wait on E15, we're also waiting on the implementation of the 45Z tax credit. What were some of the comments that the RFA provided to the Treasury Department on that recently?
I think the biggest comment was the industry urgently needs for the Treasury to publish the new version of the GREET model. And that's the model, of course, that producers use to estimate their carbon intensity values, and that's what drives the tax credit values. Right now, the industry is using a version of that model that is more than a year old, and it does not include several changes that were made to 45Z by Congress last year. So, we've been telling the Department of Energy and Treasury that the highest priority for 45Z needs to be to get that model out and published and in the hands of the industry. And we're confident, based on recent meetings we've had and things we've been hearing, that model should be published soon.
And how are production and exports looking so far this year?
Well, production has been very strong. We're off to a record start, or on a record pace, I should say. We had record production last year. We think we're going to eclipse that this year. Much of that is being driven by growth in exports. And again, we're seeing just booming export volumes right now. Again, record volume last year. We're expecting another record this year, probably on the order of 2.5 or 2.6 billion gallons of exports. So that's been tremendously important to the industry to have those new markets and growth opportunities. So yeah, production's strong. Demand has been strong, even domestically. Even with higher gas prices and people driving less, we're seeing very high rates of ethanol blending as we see more E15 and E85 in the marketplace. So overall, the supply-demand dynamics are great right now. Fundamentals are great, and we're hoping to see that continue.
And that sounds very optimistic. I was going to ask about kind of the mood of the industry. It sounds optimistic, and it feels like there's a lot for where it to still go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the mood here is very optimistic, and I think the outlook for the industry is very bright. We see some enormous opportunities in front of the industry, um, not only in our traditional markets, but also when we start thinking about maritime fuels and sustainable aviation fuel. It just feels like we're sort of on the cusp of really breaking the doors down to some of those new market opportunities. And at the same time, you've got these policies that we've been talking about, 45Z. We've got final RFS volumes from EPA, and the signals that those policies are sending to the industry is to ramp up production, produce more ethanol. And so that's what the industry is doing. And now the challenge, of course, is making sure we have markets and demand for that additional production that's coming online.
And do you feel like the industry is going to meet that production need?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, today the U.S. ethanol industry has the capacity to produce about 18.5 billion gallons of ethanol annually. We know there are expansion projects that are underway, and so that capacity is going to continue to increase. And our demand is running around 17 billion gallons when you add export volumes and domestic consumption together. So we definitely have room to grow. We have plenty of feedstock available. Farmers harvested a record corn crop last year. Looks like another big crop in the field this summer. So things are set up very well for continued growth and expansion. And the industry has always shown that if you put that demand signal out there, the industry is going to rise to the challenge and make sure that we're producing adequate supply.
Certainly some good news amidst a year that kind of started off rough for farmers and the ag industry as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say so. And unfortunately, things are still really tough in farm country in terms of just the economic outlook. Farmers are looking at the fourth or maybe fifth year in a row of negative margins. And that's why building demand and creating new market opportunities is crucially important to our farmer friends. And we see, obviously the best way of doing that for corn is growing the amount of ethanol that we're producing and consuming. So, overall things are off to a great start this year, and looking forward to that continuing.
Thank you so much for your time today. I'm Laura McNamara at the 2026 Fuel Ethanol Workshop in St. Louis, Missouri.